shocked and a little bit concerned by how much the weather in the Bay Area was reflecting the weather I'd been experiencing over the summer on wildfires, and it felt a little too familiar.
I woke up in the middle of Santa Rosa where I live, right, in a very urban area, and the smell of fire was so heavy. And I came out into the neighborhood and there was already ash everywhere. And so that was surreal. And I felt like I was in one of those Hollywood hurricane movies, you know, where everyone's out and about.
It was very, very windy. Branches are falling down. It was difficult to sleep, I remember that. And then my wife woke me up and said, you gotta get up, we have to get out of the house. The neighborhood's on fire.
It was difficult for us to know where to go first, where the priorities were, having no idea, was this the worst of it? Was there more? What else was burning? You never knew who else would be showing up, and you didn't know if you were gonna get help. And it was a little bit like the Wild West out there in the beginning.
Police!
So I got up, and sure enough, the fire at that point was in the backyard of the home across the street from us. And there weren't flying embers, there were flying pieces of material on fire coming into our yard.
Sheriff 174, we need to make a priority evacuation now, Mark West Springs area.
Copy that. We're trying to get the fire department to handle it.
Copy. We all have to evacuate the hill, so we're coming off now.
I don't think they were able to really keep track of who was there and available. So it did, I think, become a matter of, you know, putting the call out there and say, hey, is there somebody close who can handle it? Is there somebody in the area? And, you know, no fault to them. I don't know if there even is a system in place to keep track of that many engines with that many calls in such a small area.
I had been kind of trying to figure out how I could plug in. I didn't have my crew with me. I was just this lonely, by herself firefighter. I didn't really know how I could be of help, but as soon as I got that phone call saying, basically inviting me in to do what I could, I was ready to go.
I smelled smoke. I looked out my front door and I saw a glow, which I thought was in Rincon Valley. And I kept an eye on it, and it kept getting bigger and bigger. And I decided to go find out exactly where it was.
We drove about 3 blocks down the road, stopped, got out, watched, thought, okay, there goes the house, and we need to get out of here. And the first thing that occurred to me was, I have to go to work.
As we started driving up Highway 12 toward the preserve, we saw power poles on fire all around us, and that's kind of when I think we both realized that we were heading into something different from what we had initially thought. And as we got to the top of the driveway, found that a group of the buildings had already burned down, including my coworker who was in the car with me, her family home fully engulfed in flames at the moment.
The fire spread was not just about the wind or just about the grass or the fenceable space. By the time it started hitting all these homes were just big tinder boxes of fuel to get blown all over the place. I could hear the lack of breathing in the engine, everyone holding their breath, and the shock of not only the enormity of the incident we were going to, but also the impact of this is my hometown. And then as we got closer into town, just the chaos, I mean, and you were watching people running away. You saw people running towards it to check on their loved ones. Kaiser was being evacuated.
Oh, thank you guys.
No problem.
They're gonna take you to someplace safe here. Yep, right in the bus, ma'am.
So I made it all the way up to the top, to my mom's facility, because she was a resident at Villa Capri. And when I walked in, there were 3 employees standing there talking amongst each other. There were approximately 14 or 15 residents in the lobby. That they did not have an evacuation plan. The manager was not on site. They had talked to her 45 minutes prior to me getting there. I could have left. I could have taken my mother and thrown her in my Jeep and just drove down the hill. But there was no way I could leave all those people up there.
I just knew that I wasn't going to be home for days. But I mean, there's nothing, I never could have imagined or guessed how bad it was actually going to be.
I was surprised that anybody made it here before me. And of course, at that time, I didn't realize how many others had been or would be evacuated. So yeah, when I saw Mike DeWald, you know, there was a strange sense of familiarity and raised consciousness. Okay, he's already in here. He's getting information about the severity of this situation. But we weren't here together for more than 10 or 15 minutes. And I just looked at him and I said, "Are you ready?" And we went on the air. So it was just after midnight on Monday the 9th that we went on the air.
So I was handed a set of master keys, a radio, walkie-talkie, and a flashlight. And I took my mom's side of the building by myself and managed to get that whole wing cleared. And my mother was the last person on my list, only because I knew that if I grabbed her first, I probably wouldn't be able to stick around any longer. So she was my rock. She allowed me to go through with it and get those people downstairs. Once we got everybody downstairs, there were no employees left. They had all gone somewhere.
I just looked at that and I thought, this is insane. This is insane.
The fire is right there outside of her window. My mother kept encouraging me. "You're doing great, Missy. You're doing wonderful. Keep it up. Don't worry about me. I'm fine. Just keep going." When it came to my mom's turn, because she was the last on my list, I called on the radio because she's wheelchair bound, and I got no response.
Okay.
Four 9 stand for, don't pass. Do not pass.
It was different levels of crazy. There were the calls for service that were coming in. There were the requests for resources that were going out. And then there was the chatter between everybody trying to figure out where they were going and how they were going to go. I didn't have a map. I didn't know how big this fire was. I didn't know how many people were impacted. So all the information that I was getting was through the radio. So as we were listening to the radio, there were times in the engine where nobody was speaking because we just couldn't believe what we were hearing.
I never want to go through anything like that again. That was horrible, horrendous. But when I saw all those people, helpless, with no way to get out of that building, I could not leave them. Everybody keeps saying that I'm some sort of hero, but I don't look at it that way. I look at it as common compassion.
We throw around words like, you know, others before self, but this was really an example of people losing their homes, their families displaced, and they were out trying to save other people and save other people's homes. And it just, from that sense of it, there was a lot of pride in our community.
And decided we would get water from the pool behind the house and splash it on this wooden trellis. The wooden trellis was on fire and had started burning the roof of David Bouvery's house just on the edge. And something I came to learn later is that the fire department had swung by, sprayed down David Bouverie's house as everything else around was burning, and then left. And so that was a critical piece because it had bought us time to return and actually ultimately save the structure. Otherwise it would have been gone by then, I'm certain.
Such a large percentage of these people that I spoke to were volunteers. So they weren't there because they get a paycheck. They weren't there because somebody told them they had to be. They were there because it was the right thing to do.
The police sent me away because I had a whole car full of people. And I told them I wasn't going to leave without my mother. So they put her in the back of the police car and told me to follow them.
All right, come on. Come on. Let's go. Right here.
She's going in this car.
Right
Just
here.
Get her in yours. Ma'am, this way.
Get her in there, dude.
He's got a car.
Hey,
All right, here, let me help you.
let's get out of here.
I got it.
Yeah, let's get her in, dude.
Get in the cars.
Then after we put together the Day of Remembrance at Santa Rosa Junior College, and a woman came up to me, and she had her son with her, looked to be maybe 7 or 8 years old, and she introduced me to him, and she looked at him and she said, "Tom, I want you to meet the woman who saved our lives." And I'll take that with me for the rest of mine.
I don't blame the employees for leaving because I know how scared they were. I was there. I do blame the corporation for not being better prepared to deal with something like this.
One of the things that will come out of this is the idea that fire prevention matters, pre-planning matters, emergency management matters, and not just to have those divisions, but what are they doing and how does that work in the bigger picture, you know?
And as populations grow through California, we're going to see more and more accidental fires all the time. And unless we can kind of program into every single person's mind that fire will happen and it has a really ecologically valuable role to play if it's in the right place and at the right time, and that we can have some control over how that happens, I think we can get a lot further, a lot faster than this knowledge being held in a small group of people's heads and the management being limited to the kind of government agencies and all of this.